Hi everyone, my name is Reese Mosley, and I am analyzing The Rainmaker by John Coleman. This is a bronze sculpture that is 17 feet tall and was made in 1999. The genre of this piece is considered to be American Western art, and I chose to analyze it because my great-grandparents, the couple seen on the right-hand side, have a personal connection to the artist. They made a deal with John, seen on the left-hand side with his wife, to save the first bronze sculpture edition of every series that he had made. I also really like the message behind this piece, which is also what makes it unique, because it is inspired by an Apache legend. In terms of the artist's background, he has considered himself an artist for as long as he can remember, but had to put art on pause for a time in his early 20s to focus on family. However, he quickly picked up where he left off in his early 40s to continue the pursuit of having a career as an artist. He also has a love for history and is specifically drawn towards Native American history in the early 1800s. The artist has said that he views himself as an outsider in the context of Native Americans, as he does not know it is like being born as a Native American. However, he has also said that Native Americans have had a profound effect on all Americans. The stories are complicated but rich. As a visual storyteller, I believe their history is relatable to most cultures. As stated earlier, the Rainmaker was inspired by an Apache legend where the tribe was experiencing a drought and they chose 5 members who would draw straws, so to speak, in order to decide who would try to make it rain. For these individuals, it was less desirable to get the straw because it was a huge responsibility, and making it rain is not necessarily something within their control. However, in the legend, the man who got the straw succeeded in making it rain for the tribe, so he was seen as a hero. John Coleman thought this was a great metaphor for life because it represents a very human experience of wishing or doing certain things to try and control a situation that is mostly out of their control. The general message he took from the legend was that it represents a prayer for a good life. While some may look at John Coleman, a non-Native American, and see the art that he is making, which all depict Native Americans regardless if it is a charcoal drawing, an oil painting, or bronze sculpture, they might feel as though he is appropriating the culture or romanticizing it. However, even though John Coleman is making art about a different culture, it is not cultural appropriation. Rather, he is deeply inspired and respects Native American culture by creating pieces that are out of respect and understanding of the culture. Taking a deeper look into the Rainmaker piece, we see that the person is wearing their hair down, which both men and women Apache did in the 1800s. Also, the statue is wearing moccasins on his feet, which were also worn by both men and women. Additionally, the breechcloth and the headband were worn by men. These pieces of clothing are realistic to the clothes that Native Americans would wear in the early 1800s, demonstrating that John is not taking artistic freedom and putting the person in different clothes to make it look more aesthetic, meaning that he did not change elements of the clothing to make it look better so people would like it more, taking the original meaning and culture away in the process. Another thing to point out is that the arrow at the very top of the sculpture is being shot into the sky. In the legend, the arrow represents a prayer for rain. The artist accurately represents it as the man shoots an arrow into the sky. Similarly, there is smoke that is around the man's body and around the arrow, which in the legend, it talks about the breath of the Great Spirit taking the arrow into the sky to reach the Great Spirit. The artist decided to create a visual representation of the breath of the Great Spirit. This still creates an accurate visual representation of what the original legend described, which was a prayer for rain during the drought. Also, he did not change anything for the message to mean differently from the original legend. Although he might talk in interviews about what the statue really means to him, and how he interprets the legend and how it applies to his life. However, the statue itself is accurately depicting what a realistic Apache would look like in the 1800s and preserves the original story of the sacred rain arrow legend. As stated earlier, when looking at the artist, who is an American sculptor born in California, making art that solely depicts Native Americans, which are known to be a marginal group of people, of marginalized group of people, it is easy to view John Coleman from the perspective as someone who is culturally appropriating the Apache Native American culture. However, taking a deeper dive into the Rainmaker sculpture, he accurately depicts the headband, breechcloth, and moccasins that they would wear during the early 1800s. This shows that he respects the culture by making sure that he is depicting these things accurately and not taking artistic freedom, which would take away from the original meaning. Additionally, he accurately creates a visual representation of the sacred rain arrow. This includes the arrow representing a prayer for rain and the smoke representing the breath of the Great Spirit. Even though this piece of art can be interpreted in different ways based on the person, and that the artist may even have a personal interpretation of the meaning from the legend, he still created a visually accurate representation of the legend and how Apache Native Americans dressed in the early 1800s.